From FingerLakes1.com, this is Inside the FLX. I'm Josh Durso, and today we're talking about the Ovid Comprehensive Plan. What is a comprehensive plan? What is involved in the process? Today we have three individuals who are involved in the process, and they're going to talk to us about what it looks like, how it takes shape, and what exactly people can expect, particularly Ovid residents, what they can expect ahead in the coming months. Thank you all three for being here. I have not introduced anyone because there are three people who I want to have speak for themselves about who they are and how they're involved in this process. So, John, we will start with you. John Hubbard, Councilman, how are you involved in this process, and where do you stand right now?
Hi, Josh. Thank you very much for having us here. This is a really great opportunity to get this out to the community, and we've had some issues with some communications with the community, and I think this is a phenomenal potential for us. So thank you. My history, so I'll fill you in a little bit with my history and what's going on and what's happened in the town of Ovid. Approximately 10 years ago, the town of Ovid Planning Board had come forth with a plan for zoning, and it was not well accepted. As a result, the community and the Ovid Town Board at that time decided that they would put together a visioning committee, which is very similar to what we're doing at this time. But what they did is they went through a visioning process to decide what the next step should be. And those steps included getting and hiring a third-party consultant. Our third-party consultants at this time are MRB Group. And, excuse me
EDR.
Okay, the last part. So we looked at that, and one of their suggestions is to actually move along and make a plan. But they also told us, absolutely do not do it on your own. That the community being unpaid and having their own personal peaks and prejudices, we just would never be able to get to the end of it, and it would be prejudicial and it would just be divisive. So we took that at heart. Our planning board wanted to go forward with a comprehensive plan on their own, and so the Ovid Town Board decided that they would go ahead and try to come up with the monies. We were able to scrape it out of some surplus funds in a bridge account and a couple of other places, a building account. And we were able to go forward, and we've gotten started. So that's kind of a little bit of history. The zoning word is very divisive in the town of Ovid. There were a lot of people who were very upset about it at the original proposal and meeting. So we've progressed along. We have gotten a hold and contracted with MRB Group as a third-party consultant, as that other visioning committee had suggested, and that's where we're at this point. We moved along. I am a town board member, and I am a representative to this committee, to the steering committee, from the town board, as well as Joe Borst, who is another board member. Joe was just reelected. I elected not to go for another term, and so my term will be done at the end of this year. There's another young lady that's been elected and will be coming into my position. As I went on to that committee, I was asked to be the chairman of that committee, and I have sat in that chair ever since. I think tonight we'll find out whether I continue as chair going past the first of the year. MRB Group has been very good in getting everything in line for us and helping us. As a matter of fact, they've made it very easy to go forward with what we've been doing. So I'm going to give you a little bit of my background and personal history with the zoning issue. That's why I got on the town board 8 years ago. Three of us ran on a no zoning platform. Mm-hmm. Myself, Joe Borst, and Walt Prouty, who is now the supervisor of the town of Ovid.
Yep.
Although I am not for zoning, I always said, and the rest of us said, that if the majority of the people in the town of Ovid wanted zoning, we would give it to them. We would vote whatever way they wanted as long as it was a clear majority. This process is a planning process, and it's been really interesting going forward. And MRB Group has really helped us with that, and we've had surveys, and one of the things that did come out is that we are not economically sustainable with the businesses we have in Ovid, and that the people really don't want economically sustainable businesses in Ovid, meaning light industry, heavy industry, which would ruin the persona of our area. So in that survey, a couple of the questions were basically boiled down to, do you want zoning? And then a couple that said, do you not want zoning? And they were about equally cast. Mm-hmm. We only had 5%, I believe, or 12% response to the survey that was sent out, and which in my mind is very low, but we've been told that 5 to 12% is a very good average. So I've expounded long enough. I'll let you get on to the other ladies.
So Jane, let's jump over to you. Thank you for being here, obviously. Talk to us a little bit about how you're involved in the process and how you actually got involved in the process.
Yes, thank you. As John mentioned, the town itself made the initial decision to move forward with developing a comprehensive plan for the town, and then the second part of that decision was to engage professional third party to help them through the process. And so that is how my firm, EDR, along with MRB, got engaged with the town of Ovid. Myself, I am the director of planning at EDR. I'm a principal at EDR and the director of planning at EDR. So when Diana called and asked if we were interested in teaming, of course we are. We love working with MRB. So as a team, MRB and EDR submitted a proposal to the town, and we were selected through a request for proposal process. So that's how we got here as a team. And since then, we have been working very closely with the Comprehensive Planning Committee that was assembled very mindfully by various leaders in the town so that we could get a cross-pollination, if you will, of various players throughout the town, those who are involved in agriculture, those who have homes along one of the shorelines, and other, business owners and other type of players in the town. We always like to get as many voices on the committee as we can to get a good representation of the community as a whole. That is how EDR and that is how Jane Rice got involved in the project. I'd be happy to move further along in describing what the process is all about, but I think maybe Diana can introduce herself, and then we can maybe speak more towards the process.
Absolutely. Sounds like a plan. Diana, thanks for being here. Go
Thank
right
you.
ahead. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am Director of Business Development at MRB Group, but I get involved in some planning projects mainly because it's a personal passion. I come from local government. I used to be involved in the village of Seneca Falls. I served for 8 years as mayor and for 3 years prior to that as a trustee. So I've been involved in local government operations. I know how important planning is to a successful community. And so therefore it's a personal passion. MRB Group, the firm has been involved in a lot of planning projects. It's primarily an engineering and architecture firm, but there's a strong focus on municipal planning and municipal operations. I can't think of a better project partner than Jane from EDR. When we had the opportunity to propose on this particular project, it's right in my hometown community here in Seneca County, and so therefore I have a real vested interest in seeing a success with this project, and knew that Jane would bring just the best community engagement and consideration to the process, and that's why I reached out. Very excited to work with EDR. We have focused on community engagement as a primary goal. There's been a lot of effort to actually involve the community in not only discussion, but feedback, as John mentioned from the survey. We initially kicked it off in July of 2016, if I remember correctly, with a presentation that asked the community to participate in the committee meetings as spectators and to communicate with committee members. We kicked off with a website that featured a status of where we are in the project, that features the documentation that exists so people can follow along. It also provides all the contact information for the committee members, engages so they can engage in conversation, but it also provides a portal for communication so people can, if they'd like, talk to us through email at 2 a.m. in their pajamas, which is, in this day and age, how a lot of folks would prefer to communicate. So we created that portal to promote the community involvement as well. Following that initial kickoff, we started right off with focus group meetings with different groups in the community that had been identified for being able to provide a unique perspective to the steering committee. And those groups included an agricultural committee, agricultural focus group that would also include the Amish community, which is an important segment of the community. There was a second focus group of lake residents. And of course, the town of Ovid borders both Cayuga and Seneca Lake, a very unique characteristic of the town. So lake residents from both sides of the town. There was a third group called the interjurisdictional group to focus on the relationship between the town and the school, for instance, the village, other entities that would need to weigh in on this process. Another was the business focus group, and then 2 more, seniors as a focus group, and then youth. And Rod Winkleback, who was a committee member, organized the youth group. It ended up being a large group of relatively large group of students who came out and provided some really great perspective from their point of view. So in addition to the website, in addition to all those focus group meetings that were held, and I know Connie Sowards personally visited a lot of the seniors in their homes just to make sure that they were heard. There's really been a tremendous amount of outreach. And then following that, we've had a workshop in October, the first of 2 community workshops that Jane led. And that was an opportunity for people to actually get involved with some direct feedback as a result of the survey, to follow up from the community survey. So you can see that there's just been a tremendous amount of outreach to the community.
Already over a 2-year period, and it's not done yet, right?
Correct.
So when are going to be these next upcoming opportunities for people to get, from the first exposure of 2016, entering into 2018 now, a long period of time where, you've been moving through this process. It isn't a done deal right now, correct?
Right.
So speak to a little bit about what opportunities are coming up for people to actually get involved.
Well, we have a second community meeting or workshop scheduled for December 12th. It'll be held from 6 to 8 at the town firehouse. Diana mentioned the website that was launched at the very beginning of the process. That's always an available portal that never, ever gets closed down. So people always have an opportunity to get involved from that angle. One of the reasons why we always recommend to the community, in this case the town of Ovid, to establish an advisory committee. It's so that those members of the advisory committee during their regular daily lives within this community can talk to others. And they can bring those points of view to the committee meetings. It's very critical that we have that kind of very direct connection with a lot of additional community members. And that has, in fact, happened. We've had a lot of committee members come to a committee meeting, and in between the last meeting would say, I spoke with a neighbor on this topic, and this is their comment, this is their reaction, or a collection of neighbors. So the community engagement part is something that, as a consulting team, we strongly believe in. We believe in it so much, we, so to speak, turn it on and keep it turned on throughout the entire process. And we try to provide various platforms, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
this being one of them, another being a social media platform with a web page itself, a website itself. We still strongly believe in FaceTime. That's why we hold community meetings. We think that's very important. That's why we always encourage focus group meetings, which were held in 2017. So your comment about the fact that the plan itself has not been completed is well put, but I've been involved in this business of developing comprehensive plans for communities for over 20 years. And there is no set rule for how much time it should take for any one community. Some communities have issues that really are causing some division in the community, so they need to take their time to understand why that division is there and how best to bridge that division. Other communities don't have that. They know where they want to go. That's the whole purpose of a comprehensive plan, is to understand what your future is, where it is you want to go, and what are the steps you need to take to achieve that. Mm-hmm. And so we're in that process now with the town. As John mentioned, we started this process with an issue that did in the past provide an opportunity for division. I'm using my words carefully here because I'm not necessarily convinced that it still is a divisive issue. Mm-hmm. I know and I respect that in the past it was, and oftentimes that happens not just because of the issue itself, but because of the process that was followed. Mm-hmm. This is a very different process. It's very community oriented. At the end of the day, the community of Ovid, for this plan to be a success, the community of Ovid needs to own it, mm-hmm. right? So we are working very diligently to give everybody an opportunity to voice their concerns, voice their ideas, and together find that bridge, mm-hmm. so that the town knows where it wants to go. And best, I think the town knows where it wants to go, but it has to figure out how to get there.
Right.
What are the best tools?
Now, as far as one of those divisive pieces, the zoning arm of it, is that just an apprehension that people have when a discussion starts happening about a comprehensive plan in general, or is that kind of an Ovid specific issue because zoning did not exist prior?
In my experience, and then Diane, you can represent your experience, and John, I'd love to hear your point of view on that. There are several towns within the state of New York that do not have zoning. So is it an issue in their town or not? I don't know that means that it's an issue. The majority of communities do have zoning. And even in those communities, if you're going to revise their zoning or update their zoning, sometimes there are issues that they need to grapple with. Zoning in and of itself is just a tool. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how I see it. It's just, it's just a regulatory tool. So whether a community should or should not embrace that particular regulatory tool, I'd like to ask more questions. Why would you embrace it? What is the purpose you would use it for? And then once you understand those answers, you better understand whether that's the best tool for you. There's a whole other set of other tools. Is the concern a land use issue? Is it, as John mentioned, there is some concern with in ensuring that there's a future tax base that is sustainable for the town in terms of its expenses. That's a very common issue today with towns across New York State.
I think that the fundamental purpose of a comprehensive plan is to create a vision for the community of the future and what the community wants to become. So in order to kind of address what that vision might look like, first a community has to look at the current conditions. What exists? What are we now? And what are the challenges that we face? What is it that we love so much about the community that we wouldn't want to compromise it going forward and, creating this future? All of those discussions would involve, what does government look like? What services exist? What land uses and tools, land use tools are in place? Is it working well? Should we be looking at other tools? What could we do to foster the kind of growth that we want? So all of those considerations are wrapped up in the discussions that take place in a comprehensive plan. You mentioned earlier process, and I wanted to say, for every community, there are unique characteristics. In Ovid, there currently isn't a good set of codes that deal with land uses, and so that's an issue that does need to be addressed. In other communities, we worked with the town of Waterloo, where there certainly is zoning in place, but there was an existing zone that wasn't an area that wasn't served well by that tool. And so there was a long discussion there about, what can we do to create an environment in this area and create and promote growth in this particular area, and what tools exist to actually make that happen. So process is so important, and that's probably the one thing that stays consistent from community to community. You go through a process of looking at who we are and what are all the characteristics that make the community unique. And from there, you have a point of origin, and you can start talking about what the future looks like or should look like.
And I guess one of my questions for you, John, is what are those tangible things that people have expressed interest in seeing and sort of seeing derived from this whole process when all is said and done?
Well, they like the community, small town atmosphere, safe atmosphere, relatively safe atmosphere. They love the beauty of the Finger Lakes. They want to maintain that. That is a high priority. They are looking at, rather than light industry or heavy industry, which we don't have the infrastructure to support anyway,
right? Because
we're in between two lakes. We are 40 miles, 18 or 20 miles from either end of the lake. The Army Depot, Seneca Army Depot, has all that infrastructure. So if anybody were to come in, as now they're discussing a trash burning plant at the depot, which I am personally against. I know some people who used to operate those in the steam generation plant, and they had to be tested for heavy metals quite frequently. So what's that do to the atmosphere? Highly questionable. I don't know as if it's really a truly green situation. But those are the things that they really want. They really want to maintain what they have. They want mom and pop businesses. They want small businesses. They want wineries. They really don't want anything big. But as a result, our sustainability starts to come into question. It takes light industry to pay taxes to offset the expenses of running a township and maintaining what we have. At this time, we don't have any threats immediately looking at us and looming in the immediate future. And financially, we don't have any debt in the town of Ovid. We have some surplus funds, but we're robbing those surplus funds every year in order to balance the budget. And we had to rob it again this year. And I've been an advocate of raising the taxes 2 or 3% every year so that we don't have to use those. But many times, politics rule out. So in any event, anything we do going forward, any benefits to businesses, building anything in would mean that we would have to use taxpayers' money, go into debt even farther, or get some grants. The downside of some grants are there's usually you have to come up with some upfront money and participate, skin money, you might say.
Right.
So that's where we're at this point, and that's what the people are kind of looking at. I would like to go back to one other point, and you were talking about availability to the public, but each of our meetings, monthly meetings, are open to the public, and they can get those dates. One is this evening, as a matter of fact, at 6 p.m. at the firehouse in the meeting hall. And if they can't make it this evening, I'm sure the podcast won't get out to everybody in time. But going forward, they can just Google Town of Ovid Comprehensive Plan, and they can go right on to that website, and they don't have to remember any long addresses to get there. Or to the townofovid.net, same thing, and they can see when the next meeting is. Everything is posted. We encourage everybody to get there. We really want the public input. The town board started this thing and looked at it with MRB Group as looking as to what the vision of the town of Ovid is and what the residents' vision is. And that's what we're shooting for. And I think we spent too much time previously on the Z word, zoning. We may come out with something, we may come out with nothing. We may come out with some land use regulations. We may come out with zoning. But it's premature to even really be stressing that at this point. We just came out with our draft plan. It's going to be discussed tonight. It is strictly a draft. There is a lot of discussion about zoning. And when I read it, I was a little bit apprehensive about the way we're going. But I am relying on MRB Group and to basically tell me that this is a draft and that this is very much changeable and that the format that is down there isn't necessarily the one we're doing. I think that I would say I would have had the steering committee tell you what our vision was before you brought that vision statement out, or the draft. But that's retrospect. And going forward, we'll have more to say.
And it sounds like it's largely just a learning process for all parties involved to kind of get through it, educate, figure things out, determine where everyone wants to go, find an amicable sort of center point, and go from there, right? Nothing's predetermined, nothing's decided now.
Right.
Everything is changeable.
Yeah.
Yes, at this stage, as John mentioned, it is a draft plan, and you have to start. We did have some discussion with the community at large about the vision statement, as well as the committee, and so we got some revisions with respect to that. So we have a draft vision statement, and started that, put that in the plan. But yes, the narrative in the plan is subject to revision and is open for modification based on what the committee wants.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say it's even in its early stages at this point. I mean, the only reason pen's been put to paper is just to give the committee something to actually respond to.
You have to start somewhere.
Yeah, you have to start somewhere. And that's the stage. So it's a very preliminary stage at this point.
What will come out of this, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What's going to come out of this whole situation is the vision of the steering committee. The vision that they see that the town of Ovid, as all the residents want, as a majority, see as their vision. And then we will put together a plan with that vision in mind, and then give it to the town board. At that point, the town board could accept it. They could table it. They could change it.
Yes.
They're the boss ultimately, and they're going to have the vote as to whether this goes forward or not. So that's kind of the steps that's going to be going along as we go. Now,
one of the things I wanted to ask Jane and Diana about is just I found it very interesting how interactive the actual workshop itself was. It wasn't just, come in, pile in this room and, listen to presenters talk about. There were different ways that people could actually get involved and actually put pen to paper themselves and kind of craft the idea and really be part of the process. For the people who might be saying, well, I don't want to go to a meeting. I don't want to spend my Saturday morning at an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour meeting. What do you say to those folks, or the people who might be on the fence about going, and to know that it is a pretty interactive process, even when you're in that room?
Yes. Well, my reaction is the meeting time frame, 6 to 8 time frame, is not intended to that all attendees have to stay from 6 until 8. We always format the meetings in a way that people can come, they can drop in, they can pop in and pop out according to their personal schedules. And we will have a presentation. That's the only piece that gets, presented, provided once or presented once. But the reason for the interactive stations is exactly what you say. Everybody has a different way of preferring how to receive information and to give information. Some people love to stand up and talk in front of the crowd. Others, that's not their gig. They don't want to do that. They would rather write their comments down on sticky notes and put it on the board, or they'd rather draw it out. Mm-hmm. So we try to provide all kinds of levels and formats for communicating their comments and concerns to the greater committee. Yeah. Really, that's what happens is we gather all those comments and we share them with the committee so they can influence the committee's ultimate decision on steps to take. So John is right in that the committee does fashion the vision for this, the vision that is reflected in the comprehensive plan that is for the community. But the community's voice gets filtered and given to the committee. So it's not independent of the greater community's point of view. And then ultimately, the real value that can come out of a comprehensive plan are its set of recommendations and action steps. As we said before, what is your future? Help us identify for you what your future is. But then what they should be relying on us for is how to help develop these recommendation and action steps so that when the plan is done and accepted by the town board, and I'm being optimistic when I say that. Mm-hmm. It's not a requirement, but I am being optimistic. When it is accepted by the board, they will then know what their next step is. It's the beginning of the process for them as a board and as a community. And
while at that point the plan itself will be done, it still is a dynamic document that will, hopefully, continue to be used and updated by the town periodically. So, to some degree, it means the process never ends. So we come to a conclusion with the plan, but if the community keeps moving forward towards implementation and adjustment,
yes.
Things change. Yep. Demographics, change. Things change.
Threats can occur.
Mm-hmm. Threats can occur overnight,
mm-hmm.
and so that's one of the reasons why it's very important to understand what a community wants for its future, and then to understand its opportunities, but also understand its potential threats. Mm-hmm. What could get in the way for it to achieve its future? And that can lead us right back to the Z word, in that I understand the community has had some types of land uses proposed for the community in the past that it was not fond of and not interested in. And so understanding that it's not just that you want to understand that potential is out there, because it's always out there for every community. That's just almost too hard to get your arms around. Mm-hmm. More importantly, I think, is to understand those land uses that you think would be of value to the community, that the community would welcome. And it doesn't mean that you need a zoning for that at all. Right. That's not where I'm going. Mm-hmm. It means, for example, let's use the vision statement. I believe, John, that you referenced it, of maintaining a sustainable way of life in this agrarian culture and characteristic that we have in the town of Ovid. So the question then becomes, how do you do that that's economically sustainable? And I'm throwing this out there as an idea. There's perhaps an idea of some solar farms, right? So maybe that is a tax base or an opportunity for economic development that would add some value to the town's revenue, but not interrupt its preferred lifestyle and characteristics.
Is that really one of the big goals, is to kind of try and, through this comprehensive plan, come up with a way where, these things that can help the tax base and help that revenue stream make it so that taxpayers aren't ultimately hurt in the long run?
It is for this community, because the community does have a very, their balance, every community has to balance their revenue with their expenses, right? Just like a household. And John can give you a deeper understanding of what this community has, but it really does have a balance it has to achieve. And if it is dipping into its reserves to pay for its everyday expenses, that's not a good balance to be at, because those reserves are finite. And so you can predict when you're done with that, right? So then you need to pay some attention to how you're going to adjust your balance. One is reduce your expenses. This is where a lot of local governments are trying to share some of their services to try to offset some of their expenses. And other communities do look at how to, what can happen at a municipal level, at the town level, to help facilitate and encourage the kind of economic development that the community would embrace. We've heard the community likes tourism and that kind of thing. Is the town going to become, a tourist? When I say the town, I mean the board itself. No, they are not going to start a new business for tourism. Right. Can the board make some decisions that would help another entity come in and, bolster an existing business that is a tourism based or something like that? And that's the close look that we take with the committee.
There's much that a town can do to create an environment that fosters that kind of development, and that's what we hope to help develop, with the recommendations of a plan.
There are other less grandiose and more day-to-day specific either issues or concerns that should be addressed as well. And for example, every community has an intersection or two that is either receiving more traffic than it was originally designed to receive, or for some reason that particular roadway is not all that safe today. I don't know specifically here in Ovid, I'm not going to pull out an intersection, but those are day-to-day types of issues that a comprehensive plan should also take into consideration if it's mentioned and available for consideration. You have active lifestyles now. So active transportation is a wonderful opportunity in the town of Ovid. More biking. Where does it happen? Is it done in a safe manner? If not, is there an opportunity for the town to collaborate with, say, the county on a roadway to ensure that the right of way is strong enough and wide enough, if you will, for bicyclists, issues like that. This is the time for the town to identify some of those issues that will help it get to its future goal.
And I think one of the things that as consultants we bring to the table is helping the town consider what is actually within its control. Some things are directly within its control, some things are not directly within its control. But even, for instance, collaboration with another municipal entity is something that can be initiated by the town. So it's worth discussion and it's worth consideration. So we, like to encourage that kind of brainstorming and thinking about possibilities. But again, because we come from a municipal background, we can also help address what's feasible or what might not be feasible in the context of, economic development or growth going forward.
Now, I did want to ask you, just in terms of one of the items that I thought was really interesting in in the last workshop that you guys hosted, was sort of the people side of it. So there were some holes in just what the demographics and how the community is actually built and constructed, and it's not uncommon. But there's basically a gap from what the numbers look like, where you have young people or 30s to early 40s where they are not present. So is part of the process also trying to find a way to entice not just the businesses but the people to, when they graduate from high school, they go to college, they come to get them to come back?
Yeah, that was one of the things we heard from especially the youth group when we were talking to the different focus groups. But yeah, it's a challenge, and it's not a unique challenge to Ovid by any means. I think young folks really are optimistic and full of energy, and looking for opportunities to expand horizons. I think even being the old person that I am, in my day, that was what everyone talked about as they were, graduating high school and leaving for college. It was, I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to, go greet the wide world with enthusiasm. One of the things that I noticed about my own hometown is it's amazing how many people ended up coming back to their roots because, after exploring the wide world, they wanted to be able to raise their family and enjoy the kind of life that their parents did in a peaceful environment that's community based, in a strongly knit community. Those are the kinds of characteristics that Ovid has as well, and is an incredible draw. So what we're trying to do with this process is help identify what those key components or key characteristics of the community are that are a draw, that would bring people back. Help the community promote those characteristics, or at least preserve them, in the context of growth. And that's what the communication with, all these different groups in the community are about.
So obviously, I really appreciate you guys coming in. But before we go, just quickly, one more time, let everybody know when the next opportunity is, or when the next couple opportunities are for people to sort of re-engage this topic and let the community and let officials know where they stand.
Well, as John mentioned, check the website, and you can see an announcement about upcoming meetings. Use the website to communicate anytime that there's an issue of concern. Look for the documentation there as well. But better than a website, we'd like to actually see people come to the committee meetings and be able to, to talk with them. But Jane, the upcoming meeting is December 12th, 6 to 8 p.m.
at the Town Firehouse. It's open house, so, come when you can. 7:05, come at 7:05. Pop in, pop out. If you've got 15 minutes, share it with us, please. We'd love to hear from you.
The unique part about coming to that meeting is you don't even have to speak up. But what you could do is, if you are bashful, and many people don't want to speak out, and I see why, or they don't want to write something down, put it out where somebody else is going to be able to read it. But we do have the website, and there is a communication vehicle there that all they have to do is click on that, and they can write their thoughts. And many people put their true thoughts out when they're not sitting opposite somebody.
Right.
So you get your true thoughts. So I would encourage anybody at any time, even at this point, if they're watching the podcast, they have some strong thoughts about this, just communicate with us. Google it, and go to the site and tell us what you think. We need input. That's what this whole process is about. And I've been begging the people to come out. Unfortunately, they've been somewhat apathetic. And we really want to know what the community wants going forward, so we can make suggestions.
Well, I really appreciate.
Yeah, if I could just add,
Sure.
I'd just like to commend the town for initiating this process, for showing that kind of leadership. We're grateful, MRB Group and EDR as partners, we're grateful for this opportunity to participate. So thank you, John, very much.
Well, it's been a pleasure working with both of you. It's made it a lot easier for us, and now I can see why you can't do it locally.
Mm-hmm.
You just absolutely can't. There's just so much to be done, and those people are volunteers,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have enough hours as a volunteer.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, I really appreciate you guys coming in. Thanks, and I'm sure we'll be having you back to sort of, again, break this down as you guys continue to move forward in the process. But that is going to do it for us today. I'd like to thank our listeners and, of course, FingerLakes1.com for making this podcast possible. Inside the FLX airs Sundays at 7 p.m. on Spectrum Channel 12 and is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and the FingerLakes1.com app. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.